Thank you, Chi Alpha Nation, for joining us as we talk about leading in a pandemic. Today, our special guest is Heather Erickson. Heather Erickson is one of the directors at Wright State University in Ohio. Heather, how long have you guys been on campus over there?
My husband Andy and I have been leading as directors since 2011, so about 9 years. We've been
About 9 years.
Yeah, we've been serving at Wright State since we were students in 2003.
That's right. It was Steve Brannon, the director before, who's now the area director.
Come
Steve
on.
Brannon, a good friend of ours who's always perpetually dressed like he's going to a Nirvana concert. Wonderful friend, great leader. Hopefully he's tuning in as well. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Heather. For those who might not know, what Dr. Harvey Herman has done is he's compiled a list of data from numerous surveys that went out talking about leading in a pandemic, asking the question, how is your campus going to respond to this COVID year? Heather Erickson is one of those people who responded. We absolutely loved her answers and her insight and thought it would be incredibly valuable to share with you guys today. If you have not read that document but want to read that document, feel free to click on the link below. It'll help you download Leading in the Pandemic, and you'll have all the files you need to utilize whenever you need. So here we go. First question for you, Heather Erickson. Numerous campuses are limiting the size of large group gatherings, whether it be groups of 10 or groups of 25, making many Chi Alphas learn how to operate small. Why do you believe this will help instead of hinder Chi Alpha?
Absolutely. So Chi Alpha is already set up to be a community of discipleship groups. The heartbeat, one of our driving factors is discipleship, and discipleship happens in the context of community. And these core groups, these small group communities, are where students actually have depth of relationship. At no point in Chi Alpha have we said, hey, we want to be as big as we can be, but only this deep.
Right.
We've always been pushing for an ever increasing sense of lordship with Jesus, healthy relationships with one another. And so that happens in that small size of a core group. And then these student-led small groups, when they are maybe knit together with 2 or 3 other small groups, they can form these almost like decentralized, smaller pockets of mission, where these core groups together, we call them locally missional communities, can target areas of campus. And they can say, okay, as a community, as a section of the Chi Alpha community, we're going to reach this dorm, or we're going to reach this floor, and we're going to work together to make disciples who actually have real personal relationships with one another. It creates better buy-in. Those who are involved care more because they are the Ephesians 4, ones who have been given the authority of the ministries to then go out and pioneer disciple making in the different parts of campus.
Yes, right on. I think that's brilliant. I think in a large group centered model, the hero of Chi Alpha is the person with the microphone, but in a small group centric model, the hero of Chi Alpha is the student leader who can replicate more student leaders. So it's brilliant what you guys are doing, emphasizing the small groups, believing that pandemic has not slowed us down, but if anything, it can actually help accelerate us up.
Yeah.
I have heard the terminology missional communities before. Can you expand a little bit on what that means?
If I were even just to flip the phrase and say that these are communities that are on mission, it's not just Bible study. These are students who have gathered, who have formed small groups, and their small groups are working together not only to disciple the people that are in the small groups, but then to strategically look out over the campus and ask the Spirit of God, where are you sending us? Where would you want us to go? And then specifically with that mission in their hearts, go and find those students and fight for them so that they can come in and be part of the community and encounter Christ. So these are student-led communities on mission.
So I think that's a brilliant answer. Why does missional community then need to move from being less staff-led to becoming more student-led? You've talked a lot about students being empowered, students are going out. Why does that matter so much for Wright State Chi Alpha or any Chi Alpha? Aren't staff the experts? Why are you guys empowering students to this degree?
I have a couple thoughts on this. The first one being, we We are taking a missionary approach, just like if we were serving in another country. We're looking at who are our people of peace that have connections in ways that we do not have connections. And so we see ourselves as a team, the staff team, as the coaches who have been trained and equipped, who can then call the plays for the students who are actually playing the game, who are fighting the fight out on the field in ways that we can't. And so, especially with COVID restrictions, it is very possible that staff won't even be allowed on campus. I mean, I think that's a reality that we have to consider. And that doesn't hinder us from raising up an army. And responsibility, we say this all the time, responsibility is the miracle grow. So we're looking at where these faithful, these available, and these teachable students, and what kind of level of responsibility can we give them so that they can rise up for the time that the Lord has put them on campus. We feel very passionately that the generation that is on the campus right now is the generation that was supposed to be there during the pandemic, that God in his goodness and his grace knew that they would be there. And so as coaches, as staff, we have the responsibility to adequately train them so that not only will they thrive during this pandemic, but what God has for them as members of God's army in the future, they are fully equipped to be flexible and able to pivot and just, do whatever is required in ministry. We even see this as like the multi-generational approach of Chi Alpha. Many of us have been with Chi Alpha for a long time, but we forget that we need younger eyes who can just, without thinking, tell us, class doesn't get out till 12:15 on Tuesdays. Why are we having the meeting at 12? We're like, just the rhythms and the nature of campus. We need to be in collaboration. Not only do they know the rhythms of campus, but they know the heartbeat of the culture. And so by letting go a little bit, we're actually empowering those who have been placed strategically to be able to lead in the way that they lead, and we can lead from our perspective.
Right on. No, I'm with you. I think that makes sense. There is something kingdom about delegating responsibility to create maturity. The thing that convicts me perhaps the most in the Gospels is Jesus asked a bunch of young people to cast out demons and to raise the dead, to heal the sick, and to preach the gospel of repent and believe, which is not an easy message. And they were young people. And it seems what you're saying is it makes complete sense. If Jesus asked that of his young disciples, we can ask that of our college students. Right on. I'm with you. Awesome answer, Heather. I'm with you. Chi Alpha Nation, if you have any questions for Heather, she is in the comment section with us. Feel free to ask her any questions. We have live Q&A that can take place during this interview, and I suppose well after, depending on Heather's availability. But she's here for you guys right now. Heather, my next question for you. A response to anyone receiving responsibility they have not carried before is, but what if they are not ready? What is your response to the belief that students are not ready to lead missional communities?
I don't know if as staff, we are ready to lead through a pandemic. I mean, we're doing our best to gather resources and stuff, but we are the first to be faced with situations like this, whole lockdowns, virtual learning, virtual interaction. And so we are really in the same place that our students are. And by God's grace, though, we are thrust into this and we are trusting him to lead not only our staff teams, but our students and to raise up those who are prepared. As we've been praying, we keep reminding ourselves that there is no better time to be on campus. And we feel like this is a prophetic moment of development in the lives of this generation, where what God will do in them, what God will do to them while they are learning how to lead, making mistakes, trying again, God will use and do through them later when crazier things are happening in the world.
Sure.
And so if we are expecting a perfect fall, I think we've set our goal in the wrong place. I think we have to surrender the idea that we're going to nail it 100% And we have got to continue to create that culture where our students have the freedom to fail and to learn within the context of healthy community. Our
Yes.
communities are strong enough to be able to handle mistakes and setbacks and learning. We are all pivoting through this. And so being able to teach our students, how do we recover from failure? How do we recover from discouragement? What is God teaching me in the midst of hardship? How can I sacrifice my allegiance to the idol of control and come over here and submit all of my life, including my small group, including my expectations, to his empowering presence and lordship? How can I do that? Well, let me walk you through it, right? And so we're not looking to win the pandemic award. There's no Alfie at the end of the year for our students for that. But we know that we are a missions movement, and we were made for this, to thrive under crazy conditions. And so if we are committed to continuing to raise up those who will help usher in the end time harvest, then we've got to teach them how to take on things maybe when they're not ready, how to let things go when they put a lot of effort into it and it just didn't turn out the way that they wanted it to.
Yes.
But unless we die to the old way of doing things, we won't make room for the new life, the new way of doing things to be birthed in this generation.
No, that makes complete sense. I think you called it the idol of control. That is perfectly spot on. It's unfortunately tragic. I think it's something that we all deal with, whether we use the words or not. Or we all have this belief or operate with this belief that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. How do you crucify the idol of control every day to be able to empower students?
I think we have to submit our expectations to the Lord. And we expect that if we do Chi Alpha, it will produce these results. But really, Chi Alpha isn't the one who brings about the growth. Even our systems don't bring about the growth. It is the Lord who brings about harvest. And so
Yes.
we have to be committed to being slower, I think, being okay with being smaller in what our immediate fruit is, so that we can have deep personal relationships with students, have real encounters with the Holy Spirit with students, lead them in having just healthy abiding, so that our expectations are based on the Lord's will and not what we think we have to prove because we've been staff or we've been a part of Chi Alpha, or this is what we do. We don't know what we do in this situation, but we know how to be faithful to making disciples. And I think that's the win.
Right on. No, that makes sense. That's very good. I'm with you. All right, Heather, my next question for you is, what are you doing differently to set up small group leaders for success during this time of shelter in places and social distances and classes that are online versus classes that might be in person? The hero of Chi Alpha is still a small group leader. So how are you setting them up for success during this unique season?
Our hearts have really had to be compassionate. This change to the online platform for many was very complex, and it thrusted responsibility on them that they were not anticipating. What it takes to be self-motivated in an online class is completely different than what it takes to be led through an in-person class. And so
that's true.
As we are commiserating a little bit with our students, we're trying to look at what systems did we have in place and why did we have them there? If we can answer the why with a different solution that is accommodating the needs of the change in atmosphere for our students, I think we're still winning. And so we're asking ourselves, does this need an in-person meeting? When we think about X, Y, or Z, let's say leadership meetings, resource team meetings, e-board meetings, does this need to be in person? And does it need to be as long as it used to be? And so we're revisiting things that we structured our staff with, like Patrick Lencioni's books on death by meeting and things like that, and trying to navigate what is our win. And our win is effectively communicating information in a way that is easily picked up by students. And so we're rethinking, okay, maybe we don't need to have resource team meetings. Maybe we can empower peers who have more experience to lead other peers through the day-to-day of making disciples, of navigating their core groups. Maybe that could be a different structure. We're thinking through, do we need to have everybody at a leadership meeting? Or would a 2-minute update at the end of the week from Pastor Andy or Pastor Heather help keep the vision up? Professors on campus are in this position where they're having to look through and be asynchronous in their model, provide in person for some, provide online for some, provide both for some. We can do the same thing. We might have moments of challenge or moments of encouragement, but really what it's doing is it's pushing our staff to have smaller, more personal touches with students.
Yes.
And so there we are again, not having to gather everybody, but we're decentralizing the information and making it more accessible to our students through phone calls, quick Zoom updates. We've even talked about, if we have leaders of these missional communities, maybe a weekly stand-up on Zoom, like we do a daily staff stand-up, would be helpful just for them to be invigorated for the week of, this is how we're going to advance the kingdom this week. And we think it could have a lot of momentum. So we're putting the responsibility on the students in the same way. And we're reevaluating the word mandatory because we don't think it means what it used to mean anymore. It might mean you're responsible for the information. How are you going to get it? Or how are you going to help each other get it versus you have to be present?
Right. No, that makes sense. I appreciate the courage and bravery of what you guys are doing. It sounds like you're putting the sacred cow of tradition on an altar by asking a simple question that all of us are probably asking within this season. What is the difference between mission and method? And nothing but innovation is coming from those ideas. Those are brilliant ideas that you guys have, and I'm very excited to see what the implementation looks like at Wright State University. My next question for you: more responsibility to student leaders or staff leaders does not mean less accountability. So what are you guys doing to ensure quality management of missional communities that you guys are implementing?
That's an awesome question. And we have wrestled with this. The question that we're letting guide us is, what avenues of communication can we create that allow feedback and growth? And so when we have staff meetings, there's a little bit higher challenge, right? We can challenge each other more. More relationship equals more challenge. If we're not in person with students as much as we're used to, are we still going to maintain that level of challenge and encouragement? So the baseline for that is continued healthy discipleship relationships. And when we have those relationships, then we have the right to increase challenge. And so one of the practical things that we're doing is a mandatory weekly report. And so either our small group leaders or our missional community leaders or both will have just these weekly reports where they don't have to be extensive, just comprehensive, like hitting the major important things of leading a discipleship group. And are they having relationships with the people that are in there? Is their core group thriving? Are they having a devotional life? Are they spending time abiding with the Lord? Just that feedback. But then as staff, we have an obligation to interact with that information. And so we're not just putting this out there and saying, here's the expectation, but we're making a commitment then to read and to respond to those reports so that we can increase the dialogue, be informed, create avenues for communication so that they can tell us maybe even what the reports didn't tell us. But really, we're no longer asking large XA questions. We're asking missional community questions. How can we do corporate prayer? Well, it's not for the whole group. It's in the community now. And as we break that down into personal responsibility, that's where the accountability comes from. It's not like somebody will pick this up. No, in this missional community, Joe has picked this up, and we're going to talk to Joe about how it went.
Right on.
So it's more direct discipleship in that sense, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I love it. I think what you're saying reminds me of Eli Gocho's reasoning of going from assigning small groups to building small groups. He said when they were assigned, Small group member A or small group leader A would get 5 people in August. He would lose all 5 of them by December. And he would go, "Why did your small group fail?" And the small group leader would say, "Well, because you gave me a bad batch."
Give it to me. That's right.
Right. And then when you go from assigning small groups to actually building them and requiring these leaders to be responsible, if the same scenario happens and they fail, you ask, "Why do you fail?" And the leader says, "Well, it failed because I personally failed and I need to
Yes.
change A, B, and C." I think that's awesome. That's awesome what you guys are doing. Very excited to see the results of it. My last question for you, Heather. Thank you again so much for your time. We're honored to have you with us. We've been talking about this idea of missional community and empowering student leaders, not just staff leaders, and making the hero of Chi Alpha the student leader and ensuring their quality management and sending them out to find, feed, and fight for the lost lambs of God. We haven't said anything about large group or productions or anything like that, and I don't think we have to. I think right now, and well beyond this pandemic, is all about the principle of being great at being small. That's discipleship, being great about being small. My last question for you is, how can we help emphasize this? How can we be great at being small for Chi Alpha right now?
I think it's important to recognize where our culture is, that for the last 3 or 4 months, they have had the worst experience in community that they've ever had. Everyone has been isolated. We have been communicating through screens like you and I are doing now. And while that helps over long distances, it does not help with depth of connection. And so as we look away from attractional and thinking, oh, we grab people in the fall because we have the most kickin' house party, to we make disciples for the long haul when we grab hold of people's hearts, then we will create that transgenerational experience that we really ultimately long for. People are in desperate need of community as they're returning to the campus this fall, whether it is normal or not. I have to ask friends when I see them at the grocery store whether or not we're on a hugging basis, right? And so as we have an intentional smaller group approach, then the conversations of, Sue, how are you really doing? Have breathing room. They have a place to grow and a place to flourish. A large group gathering gives us the facade of having big numbers and lots of energy, but not a lot of depth and understanding. And so if we're going to create a place for people to be known and to be known by Christ and to be known intimately in the healthy, both male and female relationships together, then we have to be smaller and we have to be okay with lots of things happening across our campus in our Chi Alpha simultaneously. And that might mean missional communities are having their meetings all on the same night, all across campus, and that staff member cannot be at all of them. And that's okay because we are interceding for them. We are committed to them through fasting. We are investing spiritual labor into these souls. And I believe that as we link arms with our student leaders, we're going to see that small group approach bear wild fruit, absolutely wild fruit. We're looking for Jesus-saturated, gospel-centric communities, and Chi Alpha offers that.
Right on. Thank you so much, Heather, for your time. Thank you for helping us learn about how to be great at being small. Thank you for teaching us about why missional communities matters. Chi Alpha, please join us next week, same time, same place, as we'll be interviewing Pete Bulette for an elaboration on how to implement some of these missional communities as he takes us through what they're doing at University of Virginia Chi Alpha. Again, thank you so much, Heather. This was wonderful. This was brilliant information filled with wonderful, innovative ideas and just affirmation of convictions that are becoming concrete in the hearts of all of us. Chi Alpha, thank you so much. If you have any more questions for Heather, feel free to leave them in the comment section. We love you. May God bless you as you reconcile students to Christ, transforming university